Here we are with our calipers, freshly painted, and these are the pads that we'll install into the caliper. Got the hardware here. It's pretty basic. Now I won't be using these retaining clips. I'll be using instead a set of, let's see if I have one laying around here, a set of bolts from a company called Supercar Engineering, if I remember that right. And here's what that looks like. It's essentially the length of the pin, but instead of using the pins, you'll use that to go through your brake caliper, through the pads, and connect your brake calipers. So something along these lines. You can see the hole there. It'll just go through there and through the pads. And the intention is, as you, by using these, as you bear down on your brakes and these pistons mash in, it doesn't allow the body here to flex, because these will tightly couple the two sides of the caliper body together. All right, so first things first, you need to put these two guys on the pads, one on each pad. You can see that they will only go really one way. This side right here of the pad is relatively flat, whereas this side has an opening, and I think that's probably for the sensor wire, which is not a thing on the GS car that I'm installing these on, so won't have to worry about that. But these just kind of clip over the side there, like so. Now these little metal clips, there's one per pad, and it'll only go on one side of the pad. And it's the side that doesn't have the dipped out area. It'll be pretty self-evident. It really only fits on one ear properly. Now in my case, the paint was kind of thick, plus the metal little clip was some additional width to the pad. Some pads may fit more snug than others. Mine seemed to be relatively snug, so used a little hammer to assist with driving them down into the caliper. You'll feel once it gets solid, that's when you stop. So now we'll go for the other side. The pads are basically identical. The orientation that's relevant is the clip, ensuring that it goes on the right side of the pad, the correct side, I mean. And again, that'll be self-evident. I didn't go into it here, but there's also a backing plate that should come with your set of pads that needs to go between the piston and the material, or the pad material, if you will. Not the friction material, but just the backing plate of that friction material, collectively kind of known as the pad. Again, mine were pretty snug, so gave it a few taps with the hammer to get it to move down. And so as not to damage the newly painted surface of the caliper, used an old extension to go ahead and give it a couple of additional taps to seat it. Here, through, a little more persuasion. Little retaining clip, and I'll put this over here. I have lost track. Here's my. I've lost track of my other bolts. So the plan is, with the first pin through the caliper, putting the spring in place and holding pressure on it, then slide the second pin through, at which point for me I could put the nuts on. If you're just using the standard factory hardware, you'd slide the little cotter type pins through and your pads would be locked in place in the caliper. Unfortunately for me, it didn't work quite that smoothly. I found out even with the little hammer I couldn't get the pin to pass through the eyelet of the pad. Consequently, it was time to break out the Dremel and make myself a little more space. Alright, I got my trusty Dremel here, and I'm going to try to round out that, got a little cutting bit on it, but try to round out this this little hole in here. Take a little bit of material off the pad. We'll see how it goes. Alright. See if that was the ticket. Not quite there yet.
Closer though, I think it's still trying to go in.
A lot of metal flakes there from the from I think the little what do you call it? The metal encasing that goes over the side of it. Okay, there we go. Not the easiest of items there. Full disclosure, I did this once already on the other side. Didn't have to do this, but thought I'd save you all that whatever grief I was running into the first time around, which frankly wasn't as bad as this. Back that out a little bit. I went a little too far with it. Okay. Now, what we're going to do is get the pin, or get this little spring seated. And once we get it down where it needs to be, it'll rest in that little groove on each pad, here and here. And then we'll drive the pin back across. Now, need to line it up for the other side. Okay. I don't know how easy this would be if those were on your car. I imagine it'd be kind of a hassle, but since they're off, it's not too bad. This is a 10 millimeter socket and a 5 millimeter Allen on the other side. Okay, there we are. I've already dinged up my finish, it looks like, unfortunately. So a little mark there. Oh well. If everything else works out well, I'll call it a win. There you are. Brakes, hardware installed.